Hey y'all, welcome back to Mother's Toy Box, and today I'm super excited to show you a project I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. As you might notice, we're on what seems to be like a hold screen for a stream, and that's because we are. So one of my projects is I'm going to be streaming a couple of games, and what I wanted to do with that is create some interesting sound pieces to go with that as the background music. One big inspiration for this is Mario Nieto. He's the creator of Harmony Bloom. Huge inspiration for me, and also his plugin is one of the best things I've used for projects like this where I'm creating music pretty much out of nothing. One of the big things I like doing is when his stream pops up, I'll literally load it up and I'll be watching, listening, and playing a game or going for a run and just overall having it as background music. And it's so beautiful to watch a master at work and listen to what they create. I wanted to have something similar for my stream where there is some nice music going on in the background while I'm playing my game. And part of me thought, well, I could use the default music from Minecraft or whatever else game I was doing, but I really don't like the risk of copyright strikes. So I decided I'm going to do it. So let's switch over and take a look at the DAW here and see how we're going to be doing this. So what I wanted to do was create generative music tracks. And for those of you who don't know, generative music tracks are a mathematical system in which a computer program is given instruments, and using the mathematics of music, basically a song, quote unquote, is calculated. It's not really made, it's calculated out. So rather than a human musician or producer specifically like timing things out and getting everything else in place, the computer does all of that straight from the get-go. So let's dive in to see how I did this inside Waveform 13 and how we're going to utilize it for our streaming idea. So inside Waveform 13, I've created two racks, one being called Generative and one being called After Effects. Taking a look at Generative, you notice this giant spaghetti mess is all over the place, and then taking a look at After Effects, it's a little simpler of spaghetti, but still there. So I'm going to exit out of this one, and we're going to take a look at Generative and see what everything's doing to create those random sounds. So first thing I have is the MIDI input going to a sequencer called Stochas. What Stochas does is every time the beat comes into each of these columns, it will then go through and randomly choose a note in that column to then play. So each of these are set to a low probability of occurring, so none of them is weighted more than the other. I can weight them more if I want one note to play more than the other. But again, I want to keep it random, but I also want to keep it nice, so I programmed in chords, so it's always picking a note within the same chord. I have that chord set down here. I can change that chord whenever I see fit. I can change the octave. It's a whole fun thing. Stochas has a lot of settings that really expand upon this. So Stochas is going to choose a note, and then it's going to output that note into this instance of Harmony Bloom. This instance of Harmony Bloom is doing a lot. This is going to be the main driver of everything else that's happening throughout the entire rack. So inside this Harmony Bloom, I have it set to a very long loop length, and the speed offset is something other than 0. You can have it be really low if you want your generative sounds to be very consistent and sound the same, or you can set it to be very high so that they're very chaotic and different each time. And then make sure we quantize so that everything stays within a set time. You can like not quantize and then set these numbers, but generally that's going to sound random for sure, but it's going to sound so chaotic it's never really going to sound good. So we have to rein it in a little bit using the controls we have as humans to rein it in. So as the MIDI is coming in from Stochas, going into Harmony Bloom, I have these LFOs that are randomly turning the strings in Harmony Bloom on or off, so that when the notes go around, it may or may not hit a note. I've explained that concept in some previous videos. if you want to go check those out to learn a little bit more about that process. Another LFO I'm using right now is this little guy right here, and he's controlling whether or not the retrigger in Harmony Bloom is on or off. Retrigger in Harmony Bloom is basically controlling whether or not this pattern restarts whenever it receives a note trigger. If this is on and it receives a note trigger, well, it'll restart. If it doesn't have this on, then it'll just keep going, but it will use the same pattern with the new note input. All right, so hopefully you guys aren't too overwhelmed, because now we're going to move on to changing the channel settings to each of the strings outwards. So these are all labeled respectively for their each channels on each of the different strings. And since we're having our strings turn on and off, those channels may or may not receive inputs. So channel 1 through 8 are all programmed to different instruments. Channel 5 and 6 are actually programmed to their own instances of sequencers that are playing their own instruments. So I have Harmony Bloom and Transition on these strings playing different patterns. So Transition's just doing a da 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 da, while Harmony Bloom over here is doing a da 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 da, and whatever it's doing. And what happening is when string 5 on our first Harmony Bloom receives a signal, it will turn on this Harmony Bloom. This Harmony Bloom is not set to retrigger, so it's going to play this pattern consistently, and when it receives a new input, it's not going to restart, so it's going to stay evolving the whole time. Same with Transition, as I don't have it evolving, and it's just playing its little ditty back and forth on this sound. 7 and 8 are a little bit different. They're going to a sampler setup where I have a vocal loop and a kick sound on the other one, so that these will randomly create angelic chords and also some kick beats in the background to create a little bit more footing in all of the randomness. So that's the basics of how it works. So every time we hit play, even though it's going to start out similarly each time, if we don't change any of these settings, it's going to start out almost the exact same way every single time, and then massively change after the first basically bar of the piece. We can then go through and we can change all of these instruments. We can change what filters are being used on them. We can change their delays, their distortions, all those kind of things. We can also add specific ones for each instrument if we want to within this rack. After we've kind of set that up, we can take a look at what it sounds like. As you guys can hear, all of these different sounds play in at different times, and it just slowly evolves. So right now I do have the LFO for the retrigger in our rack off. So our first Harmony Bloom is going to start the same way every single time. So without changing any settings, I'm just going to show you. Okay, restart. And we're going to hear pretty much the exact same beginning, and then it's going to quickly change. So still the same sounds, but a completely different track was generated each time. Now, as you guys heard, the first little bit, about the first 2 bars, were exactly the same. And that's what kind of breaks this generative music experience, is because, you know, everything in the DAW and everything resets back to a saved point, is without changing any settings, you're going to generate the first few bars pretty much exactly the same every single time. One way to change that is one thing I'm avoiding, which is changing whether or not the first string in Harmony Bloom can shut off. If you give it that possibility, it will be 100% generative, but the problem with 100% generative in this style of setup is once in a while it will choose complete silence. So now that we have this, we can go into our After Effects, choose which one we're doing based on these splitters. So all I have this doing is, am I using this split to this split to this plugin? And I just have my favorite ones set up. So Solaris, Semantics Origin, OS 45, and Valhalla Supermassive, just to get some different effects on our sounds as we go along. And then once we've got everything set up, we're going to generate a track, put it into our gaming playlist, and then we'll just switch over to Minecraft or whatever game that we're playing and play out our stream. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this concept and really kind of get inspired like I did to kind of do something similar. Again, big shout out to Mario Nieto and his plugin Harmony Bloom. I hope you guys enjoyed and have a wonderful rest of your day.